Welcome back to our final section of the 5 levels of consciousness discourse. We're going to talk today about the unconscious.
And this is different than a lot of psychological kind of unconscious. This is your own version of it. Explain what your version of the unconscious is.
Well, the unconscious is really simple. It's all the things that your body does autonomically without thought. You don't have to put any thought into it. It will just happen.
So it's not just like your deep thoughts and emotions, which is sometimes what people
Right?
talk
No. It's just not your deep thoughts and emotions at all. It's
or your dreams or any of that kind of stuff. Well, the fact that you dream is a thing, but like
no, but I'm dreams are a part of your unconscious.
oh, okay, never mind. Strike what I just said.
Because dreams just happen without you doing anything.
This is
you
true.
don't have to think about them; they just happen, right? It's an autonomic function of your body.
You're right.
So that's why I was like, oh, yeah, you got it. So anything that's an autonomic function of your body just happens on its own and you don't have to think about it. It doesn't mean that you can't think about it. It means you don't have to and it will still happen. That's really what the unconscious is. And so it's interesting because the unconscious is, like we said in our introductory lecture, it's things that are learned, are things that aren't learned, that you're just born with, right? Blinking, breathing.
Reflexes.
And then it's also things that you've taught yourself how to do over the years of your life. And so that could be any number of things. The obvious ones for most of us are walking and talking. But then we talked about riding a bike. Also,
playing a musical instrument can sometimes fit into this. If you've played an instrument for a while, and especially if you've memorized pieces, I find I can sit down at the piano and start playing certain songs without having any awareness that I've even started playing them. And I don't have to think about what notes are in the song or where my fingers are going to go.
And that often happens. What will happen sometimes when somebody's doing that is somebody else will say, oh, what are you playing? And you'll be like, oh, I am playing something, right? Because you're not even aware of it. Because and it's not even just that you know where your fingers go and all that, but even the piano making the music, your personal awareness is,
it can be to that level
to where you're not even paying attention to.
But even if you are aware of the music,
there's unconscious behavior.
It's
in
the
your
kind of thing that
and,
we might call muscle memory.
Yeah.
That we don't have to bring it into consciousness in order to do it.
Right. Right. So the unconscious is all of this stuff that we're talking about, and it's an interesting one because awareness is interesting. It's something that we don't pay attention to.
Because we're unaware.
So we're not aware of it because we're not paying attention to it. Not because it's not because it's like the emotions or the context where it's so deep down inside that it takes a lot of effort. It actually doesn't take that much effort to be aware of my breathing. It doesn't take that much effort to be aware of my walking. It doesn't take that much effort to be aware of my blinking.
Yeah, you don't have to learn how to categorize carefully. Like, what emotion is this? Is this anger or frustration or irritation? Right. Or you just think you can, if you want to, raise your awareness about your unconscious actions.
And the other thing about the unconscious that's really interesting is there's 2 parts of you that are that make up your behaviors, right? Behaviors are your actions and your unconscious. Isn't that interesting? Because your unconscious are things that you're doing. They're all things that are being done. They're not.
But it doesn't come into the category of action that we talked earlier. So walking might not be an action by your levels of consciousness.
Right.
Categories.
Right, but
it is
definitely a behavior.
Interesting.
And so you have 2 behaviors. This is why it was important because our shared levels of consciousness, right? We share our actions, but we can't share our thoughts, not directly, and we can't share our feelings directly, and we can't share our context directly. Those are all indirect things that are shared through behavior.
But some of our unconscious is observable.
Most of it is.
Yeah, like our heartbeat isn't, but
Our heart, well, mostly it's
oh,
not.
it is observable.
But
That's why we can put a stethoscope on and
It's
observe
observable
it
with a
the
stethoscope.
correct tools.
If you're running really hard and your heart is beating, sometimes you can actually see, observe somebody's heart rate going up. I mean, but most of them are, I mean, like when I breathe, that's very observable. When I blink, that's very observable, right? Most of our unconscious are observable behaviors. They are shared with other people. In fact, other people are more, again, like our context, other people are more aware usually of our unconscious than we are.
So is the distinction then between actions and unconscious behaviors the level of control that you have over them? Because actions, you have said, we have 100% control over.
Right.
Do we have 100% control over our unconscious behaviors?
No. Your heart might stop at any moment, and you're not the one who's making it stop or start, right? Hopefully it doesn't, but
That's an ominous example.
Blinking is something that we do automatically. Now, I can stop myself from blinking for a period of time.
And you can blink more rapidly.
And I can blink more rapidly if I'm paying attention to it. But when I'm not paying attention to it, my body blinks when it needs to. When
you're paying attention to it, it is no longer unconscious, right? The
Right.
unconscious implies the lack of awareness.
Exactly.
And as soon as you're aware, it's an
becomes
action.
an action. So that's the interest. That's why I said the unconscious doesn't really fit into the rest of the categories, because the unconscious is kind of its own unique thing, where when you're not paying attention to it, it's unconscious. But when you pay attention to it, it immediately becomes an action, because it becomes a choice, something you're choosing to do.
So if you were worried back in level 1 when we said you have 100% control of your actions, and you thought about something like, well, I can't control if I sneeze,
Right.
it's because
You're right.
there was a separate category of behaviors that were not included in that level of 100% controllable actions.
Right.
It's kind of like a trick.
It is kind of like a trick, but it's important. It's an important distinction that should be made and needs to be made. So the unconscious, also, the other thing though to remember is that the unconscious can be changed, right? In President Nelson, when he spoke in 2019 about change, one of the things he said that we need to change is even the way we breathe. And I thought, because he was talking about all the different things, and they were all fitting really nicely into all the other levels, and I thought, well, he got all 4 of the levels that I normally speak of in that way, but he's not going to get level 5, because that's all the unconscious stuff. And then he said, even the way we breathe, and I thought, wow, he really got all of them. So that was very fascinating. So we can change, and we can even change the pattern of our unconscious. So,
and anytime you're training to do something, an athlete training or a musician training or something, you're training yourself into unconscious habits.
Right.
When you're talking about breathing, I was thinking our daughter, our teenage daughter, is taking voice lessons right now, and in voice lessons, she's having to learn how to breathe differently for singing. And if she does it long enough and she practices her vocal exercises and her breathing exercises every day, eventually her breathing will become a changed part of her unconscious, that at least when she's singing, she will breathe differently than she did before without any awareness of it.
right, exactly. And I do the same thing when I run. I breathe in a very different way.
But you had to
when I'm
train
running.
yourself
I
to do
did.
that. You didn't just
I did.
automatically know how to breathe when running
Yeah,
for
no,
maximum
no. When I was
effect.
in high school, I was trained in track how to run, how to breathe while you run, so that you're getting the most efficient um, amount of energy from your breathing.
When you play the piano, you spend a lot of time doing finger exercises that say, do the fingers in this order and move them in this way, so that later when you play more complicated pieces, your fingers naturally move in the ways that they should to play the pieces the most efficiently.
Right, right. So the other thing about the unconscious is, like we said, if you want to change an unconscious behavior, what you do is you pay attention to it, and then it becomes an action.
So you bring it up to awareness, and then you use
And then
that
you-
awareness to train it with repetitive replacement actions.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, well, not necessarily replacement, but
Just
repetitive action.
repetitive change. Just
Yeah.
a repetitive change in that action, right? You want
Yeah.
a repetitive change in that action, and you can change it. Now, here's the really neat thing too.
I guess when I said replacement, I was thinking like you were replacing the way that you would naturally breathe when you're running
With
with the correct
Right.
adapted way.
Yeah, exactly.
But replacement was probably the wrong word.
So
to use
here's
there.
the other really neat thing about the unconscious is that so we've already talked about how you don't have control of it unless you become aware of it, and then you can take control of it. We've talked about how it is a shared level of consciousness because it's a behavior, but it's also a very powerful tool when you bring it to your awareness and it becomes an action. It can be a super powerful tool for changing thoughts and feelings.
Yes, a lot of meditation tools rely on bringing unconscious into awareness. They have you do body scans or focus on your breathing or focus on this particular way of perceiving your things that are normally unconscious to you.
Particular ways of standing, right? They have people have the power poses that they have people stand in to give them greater confidence. So you can take all these unconscious behaviors, and you can use them, and they actually are particularly powerful with level 3, with the feelings, helping to overcome feelings that are not desirable. Though they can be very good with thoughts as well, and especially when you talk about power posing and stuff like that. It's a very, targeting those negative self.
Meditation is also super great for thought changing.
Yes. Well, guided meditation is.
Yes, that's what I was
And
thinking.
so there's two different types of meditation. You have guided meditation where somebody is vocally taking you through a process. And then you have also the unguided meditation where you're just sitting and kind of letting go of everything. And if you're having unwanted thoughts, that type of meditation is not going to help. You're going to need the guided meditation to move you away from the unwanted thoughts. However, that kind of meditation can be very powerful with feelings, where you're just trying to just let go of everything. So you would use them in different settings, but the unconscious. The point is that the unconscious has it can be extremely powerful when brought to awareness in changing. Now, having said all this, something I need to point out that's super important. We use our actions to change our thoughts and our feelings, but we are not changing our thoughts and our feelings. That's not we don't have the power or control to do that. What we're doing is we are consecrating our actions to the Lord in whichever way we choose, and the Holy Ghost is sanctifying our thoughts and our feelings and our context. The change does not come from within us. The change comes from God, and that's an important distinction that you have to know. you are doing everything you can to consecrate your actions, but it is God that is changing your thoughts, your feelings, and your context.
So speaking of changing these things, you talked about how we can change our unconscious. We gave a time frame for change for the upper four levels. Is there a time frame for how long it takes to change an unconscious behavior?
Well, changing an unconscious behavior is instantaneous. Once you bring it to awareness, you can change it right there. Because actually some of the patterns of behavior that are unconscious patterns are actually contexts, not
Their habits.
their habits. And so if it's a habit, it's a context.
So, for instance, you can change your breathing immediately by bringing it to your awareness and taking slow, deep breaths, for instance, if that's what you're trying to change. Okay.
But if you're trying to change the way you breathe as a pattern of breathing, then you're changing a context, and it takes longer.
How about, is there an amount of time in general it takes to bring something that is not yet unconscious into being unconscious? Like we talked about, walking, riding a bike, playing an instrument. Is there a general time frame for how long that takes, or does it depend lot on the type of thing that you're...
It depends on the type of thing, and it depends on the age that you're beginning to make the change. It depends on a lot of things. But it's interesting, because I think of the like we were talking about our daughter learning to sing and learning to breathe differently, right? The breathing itself is not the context. It's the right way, the belief that this is the right way to breathe. That is the context.
Okay.
So for example, if she's trying to teach herself to breathe differently, what she has to do is she has to convince herself that this new way of breathing is the right way to breathe.
For the activity involved.
And once she's convinced herself of that, it will actually be very fast. That the actual unconscious pattern of breathing.
About the same amount of time as any other contextual shift.
Yes. And but once
so that's
she's
the 6 months to 2 years time frame.
Exactly. But once you've convinced yourself this is the right way to do it, it actually doesn't take that long to actually make the habitual change. The habitual change itself takes about 21 days. But it's convincing yourself, whether it's your own physical body, whether it's your mind, whether it's your spirit, it's convincing yourself that this is the right way to do it. That's what takes time, because that's what you're having to change. That's what God has to change, your reality of breathing.
So we're coming to the end of this introductory course on the 5 levels of consciousness. As you're looking back over these 6 lessons and all the things we've taught, what are some things you really want participants to take away from this?
The main thing I want people to take away really is just awareness of who you are, and that no single element, no single level is your identity. You can't identify yourself as I feel this way, so that's what I am. I think this way, so that's what I am. I act this way, so that's what I am. You can't...
Even though you talked about how we're judged by our actions, you still...
We're judged by our actions, but that's still not who we are. And we have to be judged by our actions. But ourselves...
Is our context who we are?
Our context is not who we are. Our context is how we experience. So that's the thing, is what I want you to realize is that none of these identify you. They're all a part of you. And if you put them all together, even then, that's not who you are. That's not your identity. It's only a part of your identity. Because there are so many other parts of who you are. When you think about how you've been developing over the years, when you think about what motivates you to do the things you do, when you think about the people around you and how they affect and influence you, all of those are just as much a part of you as these levels of consciousness are. And that's what I want people to realize, is that just because you feel something does not mean that somehow that's who you are and that you have to be true to your feelings. Just because you think something doesn't mean that's who you are and that you have to be true to your thoughts.
Or
What you
true
have
to
to
your
be,
context.
or true to your context. What you have to be true to is God. You have to be true to God. Stop trying to be true to yourself in any of these ways, because it is God who is the truth.
So this is really a self-awareness tool. It's a
Mhm.
foundational tool for making other steps. But what
Right.
what I hear you saying is that even though it's a self-awareness tool, it doesn't make you aware of everything about yourself.
No.
And there's no one self-awareness tool. I don't know if there's even a series of self-awareness tools that can make you aware of everything about who you are.
No, there's no possible way to do that in this life, because we have a veil placed over our minds that will prevent us from having truly understand our identity. Because our identity is so connected to God himself. There's no way to separate that God from us. And so the only way to really understand who you are, you have to understand who God is. You cannot understand yourself if you don't. But here's the really cool thing about these levels of consciousness, is that God also has all 5 levels of consciousness. He has actions, he has thoughts, he has feelings, he has a context, which his context is the truth, ours is reality, his is the truth, but he has a context, a way that he experiences the world, and he has an unconscious.
How do we know God has an unconscious?
Because we are made in the image of God. And that doesn't just mean our physical bodies. That means what we are is what he is. He's just the perfect version of it.
Okay.
And if I have an unconscious, that means that God has an unconscious. But his unconscious is perfect. And I don't know, maybe he has more awareness of his unconscious in a way that I don't. Maybe his unconscious is more consistently a part of his level 1.
Maybe it's something we don't really understand.
Well, we certainly don't. And that's what I say, is we're not going to understand ourselves until we understand God. He is the key to understanding our own identity.
All right. Well, let's give a final homework assignment that you can carry on from the end of this class till the beginning of whatever is the next class you choose to take.
The final homework assignment for this one is simply to bring one or more of your unconscious behaviors to your awareness and pay attention and change it in the moment. I'm not saying change it forever, but
So
just
do a breathing exercise.
do a breathing exercise, do a meditation, we have meditations on the website. You're welcome to get on and
Some
do one of
guided
those
meditations,
meditations.
yeah.
I've got a couple of guided meditations. That would be a great way to do it. Go for a run, because that's going to raise your heart rate, and you're taking control of, but you have to be thinking about it, be aware of it. How is my heart rate changing as I run? And then after running, walk for a little while and pay attention to how your heart slows. So there's any number of ways that you can bring unconscious behaviors into. Another way you could do it is have a staring contest with somebody. And see, I lose staring contests because I don't
Keep
like
yourself from blinking.
Yeah, I don't like my eyes to get dry. But you could do that. Any of these things that you can do, just take one of these unconscious behaviors and bring it into your awareness and change it momentarily.
All right. We appreciate the time that you've spent with us learning about the 5 levels of consciousness, we really believe that this is a powerful self-awareness tool that will help you to understand yourself better in a way that will help you to make your life more the way that you would like it to be, and with a goal of making your life more the way that God would like it to be.
And as you become more aware of yourself through these levels of consciousness, as you start to be more aware of your context, more aware of your unconscious, more aware of your feelings and your thoughts, you will learn that, and you have to practice though. You can't just be like, okay, I took this class and now I know about these things. You have to actually pay attention to yourself. But what you'll find is that as you pay more attention to yourself and as you get better at reading yourself, you will also be able to read other people better, and you will find that you are a more empathetic person and that you have a greater capacity for charity for your fellow men.
All right. Thanks so much.